Welcome, and thank you so much for joining our Napa Valley sessions. In the Napa Valley, we have a vision. And this vision is that the Napa Valley should be the world's leading wine region, preserved and enhanced for future generations. My name is Connor Best. I'm the head of global marketing for the Napa Valley Vintners Association, the association of 550 wineries in the Napa Valley banded together to promote, protect, and enhance our region. You know, sometimes people ask us, what does it mean to be the leading wine region? And sometimes even people ask if that's a little arrogant of us to say that we're the leading wine region, or we saying that we make the best wines. And I always stop and say, no, it's not about making the best wine in the world. In terms of wine quality, actually, I always say Napa Valley makes among the best wines in the world. But being a leading wine region is about looking at the big picture. It's about looking at the process of where we are and where we're going. It's about pressing forward, making hard choices, and setting an example for the rest of the world. Striving to be the world's leading wine region is about constant improvement, ever higher quality through innovation, technology, greater attention to detail, and taking nothing for granted. And that not only that we do this today, but that we strive to do this for generation to generation to generation in the future. Reflecting on this vision of Napa Valley, I realize that it has many aspects in common with the concept of sustainability. And so to help us explore this word sustainability and what it means, we've asked Sandra Taylor to lead a discussion with 3 winemakers and the executive director of our local sustainability organization, Napa Valley Green, and to lead a discussion on how the Napa Valley is leading the way in sustainability. And so Sandra, I invite you to come on screen. Sandra is the CEO of Sustainable Business International. She consults with companies on environmental sustainability and corporate responsibility. She's a professor at Chatham University. She's written many books. She was previously the senior VP of corporate responsibility at Starbucks and has worked at Eastman Kodak in the US State Department. She has a BA, a law degree, a BA in French actually, a law degree, and an MBA from the Bordeaux School of Management. So without further ado, Sandra, bonjour, comment ça va?
Bonjour, ça va bien, merci. Welcome, bienvenue to all of our guests today. I'm really honored to moderate this discussion, a Napa Green education session on the real substance of sustainability. You know, sustainability can be a complex term. It typically presumes that resources are finite and should be used conservatively and wisely with a view to long-term priorities. In the simplest terms, sustainability is about our children and our grandchildren and the world we will leave them. Typically, when we use the term sustainability, we think of avoiding the depletion of natural resources and protecting the natural environment, but it's actually more than that. I believe sustainability is more than just protecting the land. It extends to preserving culture and community. We also need to protect social and economic resources. My preferred definition of sustainability, sorry about the noise outside. My preferred definition of sustainability is the integration of environmental health, social equity, and economic vitality. So environmental health, social equity, and economic vitality in order to create thriving, healthy, diverse, and resilient communities. Unfortunately, too often sustainability gets a bad rap. It's largely a marketing tool without much rigor or substance behind it. Today, you'll learn from 3 Napa Green certified wineries what they've done to implement more than 120 stewardship practices to save energy and water, prevent waste, take climate action, and care for employees and community. My hope is that you'll come away from today understanding all the work and commitment behind being a third-party certified winery or vineyard, or both. So thank you for joining me and our panelists representing Napa Green and 3 Napa wineries that exemplify commitment to people, planet, and prosperity. Each panelist will introduce themselves briefly, and then I'll launch our discussion with a few questions. So let's get started with our panelists. Please join me, Chris, Allison, Todd, and Anna. So Chris, I'll let you begin by introducing yourself and tell us about your winery.
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Pisani. I am the senior winemaker at ZD Wines. We are a small third-generation family winery located in the heart of the valley in Rutherford. I will say that organic farming and sustainability have been part of the culture here at ZD Wines for more than 30 years now. Began with the conversion of our Rutherford Estate Vineyard in the mid-1980s to organic. Then after a purchase of our Carneros Estate Vineyard, Carneros Estate Vineyard in 1996, we converted and had both vineyards certified in CCOF in 1999. And then more recently in 2018, which also coincided with our 50th anniversary, after years of arm twisting and cajoling, we got all 12 of our outside growers to commit to organic farming and get certified. So in 2018, we've had basically every brewery that comes into the winery certified organic. That's it with that. I'm happy to have been invited to this panel today. I am looking forward to sharing the things that we do here at ZD with you and the rest of the panel.
Thank you. So Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison Rodriguez, and I'm winemaker at the Hess Collection. I'm coming to you from about 1,500 foot elevation up here on the beautiful Mount Veeder AVA. So I've been with the winery for about 5 years, but we were founded over 40 years ago, and our founder, Donald Hess, has been really instrumental in setting up a number of the sustainable programs that you'll hear about today, including the Certified California Sustainable Winery Program with the Wine Institute, and also including Napa Green Land and Napa Green Winery. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Todd.
Hello, Sandra. Hello, everybody. My name is Todd Mostero. I am the Director of Viticulture and Winemaking at Dominus, and I've been here since 2007. We're located in Yountville, and I'm honored to be here with all of you.
And Anna, Executive Director of Napa Green.
Yes, thank you, Sandra. Yeah, so I've been involved with Napa Green since 2015. We became an independent nonprofit at the end of 2019. And we're one of just 4 sustainable wine growing programs nationwide that offer the opportunity for comprehensive certification, both in the vineyard and in the winery. You can be either or both, as Sandra mentioned. And it's great to be here with these 3 winemakers and wineries, because they are all, as we call it, soil to bottle certified in the Napa Green program. And we did just roll out a new Napa Green vineyard certification focused on climate action and regenerative farming and social equity. So I know we'll dig into that a little bit more later on. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. So let's start with Todd. I'm going to ask each of our winemakers to share with us what's your own specific reason for commitment to sustainability? Often it's family, leaving a family-owned winery and you want to preserve it for the future, land conservation, protection of the environment. Tell us more about your winery's specific motivations to adopt sustainable practices. Todd.
Thank you. Well, I was fortunate enough to start my career working in France with Christian Mouex, who lives in the vineyard, usually one hand in the soil, another hand with a pair of shears, either pruning or harvesting next to his teams, and with such humanity. And it taught me that that winemaking is about interconnectedness, that in fact you can't make a quality wine unless you're in a thriving ecosystem and a vital social environment. That was really the foundation of how it started. You know, as a multi-generational family-owned estate, we inherited our vineyard from George Yant, who had a long-term vision. And I think our legacy depends not only upon the vitality of the vineyard and the communities that we transmit to our children, but it also depends upon the influence that we may have upon the greater wine industry and beyond. And that's really what motivates us.
Great, thank you. And Chris?
Yes, you'll have to forgive me for putting my organic hat on a little bit today, but if you ask any organic farmer or grower, they'll all talk about their light bulb moment that kind of made them see the light, as you'd say. And ours was done by Norman Delers, ZD's co-founder, back in the mid 1980s, and this was after an unfortunate pesticide application that he had after an outbreak of leaf hoppers, of all things. And it was the classic example, and he always told the story great. He would go out there, and of course you freak out, your grower, you see this infestation, and he went to his local ag extension specialist, and they of course go to the book and they pulled out the material to eradicate them. And he describes his time on the tractor, as he's suited up in his, mask and his Tyvek suit, and he's putting the sign up afterwards that, keeps the crew out for 5 days. And, he said that he came to this conclusion that there really had to be a better way. And, keep in mind, Norman was no hippie. He was an aerospace engineer, very thoughtful, smart, quiet guy. And he decided that he was going to look for that better way. And, it was after a lot of reading and looking into things, all these approaches to organic farming, consulting with people like amigo Bob Contasano, who was really a giant in the organic movement, who unfortunately passed away late last year, attending conferences, that, he decided that this was the approach that he thought that we should take. And the concept that most fascinated him, and I think it is really, we're going to talk a lot about it today, was this concept of biodiversity. And it was after, I think it was woman Elaine Ingham out of Oregon State University has the soil web thing, and you could look it up. It's a really fascinating approach. And, he was fascinated by this idea that you could, by encouraging diversity and maintaining a balance, not just in your soil, but in your entire vineyard, that you could, harness this inherent power of Mother Nature and not only prevent problems, but also grow better grapes and make better wine, because at the end of the day, that's what we're about. And so, fast forward to today, as we're going to talk about, a lot of these newer practices and some of these new certifications and programs like Napa Green. I just want to say that, we've, enjoyed doing these. It's really kind of made us look a lot closer at our organization, and really through our green team, I want to really quickly mention, it's led by Robert Delers, our CEO, Chad McCumber, our cellar master, who I give a special plug to. He takes on a lot of the work that this really requires. Rafael Yams Jr., our second generation vineyard manager. That with these programs that we, have really, I think, made changes into our operation that sometimes on the larger picture seem like they're small, but that I think can lead to some of the real transformational change that we need and that we owe to our children and future generations.
Great, thank you. So Allison, share with us your commitment to sustainability and what motivates Hess' commitment to sustainability.
Sure. Well, I would take it back to, again, our founder, Donald Hess. He is an immigrant from Switzerland. And I think he came to the wine business with a real feel for what it means to have a long history, family history, a generational history in the wine business. So we have 5 generations of the Hess family that's been involved in winemaking. And they've always approached this with the feeling to nurture the land and return what you take, because sustainability, there's one, I loved your introduction, by the way, of how you think about sustainability, Sandra, but there was one other thing that I'd like to add, which is our take on this, which I think is similar to everybody else here. When you sustain the land, it sustains you. You, the collective you, your winery, you, your wine, you, your colleagues who you work with, and all of our families and all of the things that we get to do every day. And so that's really the spirit that pervades our approach to sustainability and to what we do each day.
Great, thank you. Well, as you know, much of our audience today is the trade, and we may have some customers as well. So why is it important for the trade to have confidence in your commitment to sustainability? Chris?
Yeah, well, I mean, these are the people who really, outside of our own tasting room or our customers, through our website, these are the people that are out telling, our story to our customers. And, whether these are, consumers, buyers, sommeliers, and what we've noticed is, these buyers and consumers, especially the younger generation, this ever elusive millennial, they have, they are very knowledgeable, they're very savvy, and they are, aware of a lot of the problems that are out there. And I have to say they have pretty good bullshit detectors. Sorry for my language here. I say that because I have two of them at home, an 18 and a 21-year-old. And so I think, it becomes important and incumbent upon us to reach out to the trade. And yes, when we get them out to the winery, it is important to pour that glass of wine and show off the amazing quality. But I think it's also important that we show off and talk about the practices that we've put a lot of effort into and, show our passion and commitment to this. And I think when we do that in tandem with our wine quality, it goes a long way towards winning and keeping good customers. And my experience in doing some of this stuff with some of the green pours we've done, that people really they care about this, and it's it's out there in the public, and it's increasingly becoming more important that we focus on it. So that's.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to follow that with a question that I ask all the time with winemakers, and that is, does sustainability improve quality in the glass? And I'm sure many of the people watching us or listening to us today have that same question. So what do you think, Todd? Does sustainability improve quality in the glass? And is that a message that we should be pressing with the trade?
Oops.
I think you might be on mute.
There we go. So glad you asked me that question. It really is speaking my language, because in fact, long-term quality can't exist without sustainability. And I think that that's really the important point here. In fact, there's so many sustainable practices that can increase a wine's purity, balance, complexity, sense of place, all of the things that we really want to find in the glass. So let me give you a few. And let's start with balance. A balanced wine can only be made from balanced grapes, and balanced grapes can only be grown on balanced vines. And balanced vines can only grow in soils that are living and stable. So by studying our soils, understanding them, and then adapting cover crops that are perfectly well suited to this environment, increase biodiversity, microbiological life, and in turn provide an environment for our vines to grow in harmony with the place. So inevitably they'll produce wines, grapes, that are balanced. Dry farming, which will increase the depth of roots within the soil, will allow them to explore horizons that wouldn't be available to vines that are otherwise irrigated and grow roots on the surface, which increases their complexity and their sense of place. I think we would be remiss if we forget to highlight how much social equity plays a part in quality. And sometimes we forget how. But essentially, workers, field workers who intimately know a place, who have been around for a long time, so are in a safe and secure environment, so they want to stay for a long time. They know that the end vines and end rows are a little bit more vigorous, so they're going to prune them differently. And they know that row 1, 2, and 10 are a little bit less vigorous, and they're going to need specific attention, maybe more leaf to protect the grapes. All of those things are ways of transmitting the very particular character of this place in our wines. But how is that impossible to keep employees for a long time? Well, it's social equity, meaning we provide housing to many, affordable housing to many of our employees. We provide a living wage, which allows them to live in Napa, which is a bigger and bigger problem. We supply a benefit package, which is the same for me, the farm workers, and every other employee here. I'm really proud to know that I have 80% of my coworkers who are immigrants, and many of whom are now in managerial positions here. It shows that by investing in our communities, in our people, we invest in a system, and our wine is really only as good as the people that make it.
Great. So Allison, I mean, what's your take on why we need to instill confidence in the trade and how you translate that quality in the glass as being a result of your commitment to sustainability?
I think it really comes down to one word for me, which is integrity. You know, we want our trade partners, just like we want our vineyard partners. Just like we want our employees, we want everyone to be able to take our word, right? We give our word, and to be able to know that we're doing this not just as something that we can put on our label. We are doing this for future generations of the Hess family and of our own families. But I think, you know, kind of circling back to that idea of integrity, we want people to understand that it's, you know, this isn't just sustainability as skin deep. It goes a lot deeper. It's something that we look at through every point of our winemaking process, from growing our grapes to making our wine to distributing our wine. We take sustainability seriously at every single one of those points by not just talking about it, by taking action and being certified and having third parties come in and check our continuous improvement on that journey. So I think it's important for your trade partners to have trust in what you're saying.
Okay. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about energy and climate change. Last week, we celebrated Earth Day, and that created opportunities for governments to reiterate their commitments to climate talks, hopefully, and carbon reduction commitments. So I'd love to know from you how your practices in the vineyard, in the winery, in distribution help mitigate effects of climate change. But first, I'd like for Anna to tell us more about Napa Green standards and how that, how Napa Green certified wineries are encouraged to adopt standards for carbon capture.
Yeah,
Anna.
thank you so much. Yeah, so both of our winery and our vineyard certification are very focused on resource efficiency, climate action, and social equity. Todd, I love what you're just saying. I want to capture all of that for later, because especially that emphasis on social equity, that people piece of sustainability can get kind of sidelined or overlooked, and it's so essential. But also, I mean, I truly believe we're in a climate crisis and we have no time to waste on taking climate action. And so, you know, can Napa County solve climate change or solve social inequities? No, but as Connor was saying at the very beginning, we have such a powerful leadership platform, and collectively we have so much power. And so the actions that we take really reverberate and get noticed by other wine industries and other beverage sectors. And so that's why we've developed our new Napa Green Vineyard certification to focus specifically on climate action and what's called regenerative farming practices, as well as the social equity and justice and inclusion. And so in particular, I think people are asking, what is carbon farming? What is regenerative farming? What does that mean? So these are practices that help to store more carbon in the soil. So it actually serves as a kind of climate mitigation measure. So this is cover crops and compost and hedgerows and reducing the use of synthetic pesticides and reducing tractor passes in the vineyards. But all of these practices are also called regenerative because they have incredible soil health benefits and plant health benefits and biodiversity benefits and benefits for workers in terms of reduced use of pesticides. So it comes with a slew of other benefits that we do believe also translate into quality benefits as well in the fruit. So that's why we're really focused on those. I think carbon farming is a hot topic right now for a good reason. There's so much potential there in terms of agriculture and climate action.
And how do those get translated into standards for certification?
Yeah, so our new certification on the vineyard side has 6 elements. So there's the social equity, justice, and inclusion element. And then there's the carbon farming and regenerative farming, every new certified vineyard has to have what's called a carbon farm plan. So these are ways you can store more carbon. It estimates how much more you can store, and then you start implementing the ones that make the most sense. There's also a water efficiency section. And I think someone already asked about drought. So the other great thing about these practices too is they really increase the resilience of the vineyard to drought, which we're definitely in again. But we also have added water efficiency, irrigation efficiency standards, have to do irrigation assessments, make sure your irrigation system is running as efficiently as possible. We also have tree and forest preservation standards, keeping those mature trees in the ground, planting more trees. And we have a prohibited and restricted pesticide list that people have to adhere to. And we also have what's called conservation burning. It's a way of burning vines that have been pulled, other wood that has been pulled that reduces smoke and air pollution by 75 to 85%. So these are really rigorous practices that are both kind of practice and performance based that our members have to adhere to. And that's also true on the winery side.
Yeah, it does. It sounds rigorous. It sounds hard. I'd love to hear from the winemakers. How do you, a number of you have several certifications. How do you implement all this? And then how do you communicate this to customers? So I'll start with Chris.
Yeah, so when I sat with my green team before this, I knew we were going to be talking about, the real substance. And so, we had so many different things they wanted me to get her and talk about. And I really only had to pick a couple. And, I think a lot of times, the problems, they seem so vast. And when you sit down and you really start to dig into your operation and you see these different, things that you can do, that, it can be overwhelming. But I think we need to step back and, we've done that over the years, and you pick your projects and you get into the meat of it. And so, I'll say it's great to drive up the valley right now, and over the years seen more and more solar arrays pop up around the valley. We put a 124 kilowatt ground array in 2008, about 740 panels. More recently, with our overgeneration, we have 9 employees that have either plug-in hybrids or electric cars. We've got 7 charging stations on the property that feed off of those panels. We in 2003 started, was really at the time a state of the art, and we've spent a lot of time and money and effort on it, but on-site wastewater treatment that allows us to basically, for every gallon that goes down our drains that's processed wastewater outside of domestic, we treat on-site. And for those of you that have been to ZD, we're only on about 7 acres, and we don't have a big pond that we can deal with this. And we basically had to put what amounts to about over 60,000 gallons of underground aeration storage membrane bioreactor for filtration, on this really small footprint. But that has allowed us to, and he told me we've gotten to 1-to-1, the golden, 1 gallon of water to 1 gallon of wine. I look back at our data for 2020, we didn't do quite good, but we do stay under 5, which I think is considered really good. But sometimes with these things, I mentioned, things that sound really expensive. We put in a 90,000 gallon rainwater collection system at our vineyard when we did a remodel, and remodels are great times to do this stuff. You're tearing things up anyway. But a lot of times it's even really small things. I mean, for years we had, the water truck come. We have water coolers, and they drive and bring in half a dozen 5-gallon bottles of water, and it was. Robert had this light bulb one day. He's like, hey, why are these trucks out there doing this? And, we invested in some small water coolers that, you do a cold water tap, and they have really good filtration on them. And we eliminated, that much more trucking. And then I'll throw one more there and let the others give a chance here. But, we for years used diatomaceous earth, which is a filter aid to filter our wine lees and our wines. And it really bothered us when we, during harvest have to call Up Valley Disposal, and, we have probably 3 dumpster pickups a week, just, sending stuff up to Clover Flats, our local landfill. And so, we waited for this, moment that we can get rid of it. And in 2018, we made the investment in a new high solids crossflow that basically allows us to deal with all that lees. There's a company that will even take the high solids discharge that we have from it, and they'll purchase it from us, so even better. So again, these are, when you sit down with a lot of the stuff, the complaint is that it's checklist and it's on paper, but when you actually turn it into something real, I think it has a lot of meaning.
Yeah. So, Allison, tell us about renewable energy, what you're doing around climate. I think that would be really interesting for us to hear.
Yeah, I think, when we look at our efforts, it's a combination of, technology, really high technology, and uh, really low technology, growing practices. So on the one hand, we do have a solar array that provides us with about 90% of the energy that our winery uses at this point in time. It's about 500 kilowatt hours. So it's a pretty big solar array. And we're also using the same technology that Chris mentioned, the membrane bioreactor, which is really a way to, in a very small amount of space, be able to recycle a lot of the water that you use. So we recycle almost 3 million gallons of water a year as well. And so you have these sort of high-tech things that come into play, but we also farm, we have almost 900 acres in the county of vineyards. And in those, that's just 900 acres of planted vineyard. The Hess family actually owns a lot more. For instance, our estate winery up here on Mount Veeder, the whole parcel is about 900 acres, but over 600 acres of that is actually left in natural land. It's left for nature corridors. It's left for riparian, which is just like a fancy way of saying a little stream, and runoff areas for our good watershed practices. And so part of our very low tech approach is to not use all of the land that we have. And then the land that we do have is, I'm a German trained winemaker, so I learned how to make wine in the hills of Germany, and I kind of never left the hills. So up here in Mount Veeder, we have very steep hills, and there really is no way to till them, even if we wanted to. So if we tilled our land up here, number one, it would be extremely unsafe. I don't recommend it. But also, we'd lose a lot of that really precious land that we have up here on our mountains and on our hillsides. So we're really, by default, we are a no-till winery. So the biodiversity that several speakers have spoken of is also really important to us. So being able to provide good habitats for animals that like to work with us out in the vineyard, whether that happens to be, hawks, or, bat boxes, or some of these little, bluebird boxes, ways to basically incorporate our avian friends into our vineyard management. But also, we own a herd of goats that we use for brush removal, and we use for weed removal in the springtime. So we have this mix of high tech and low tech sustainable practices that touch on like I mentioned earlier, touches on every part of our winemaking journey from grape to glass.
Well, agriculture and land use, obviously, viticulture can contribute significantly to emissions and climate change, unfortunately. Lately, we've heard a lot about how farming can help mitigate climate impacts through regenerative agriculture. And I know we've gotten a few questions from our audience about regenerative agriculture, what it is. It can rebuild soil organic matter. It can restore degraded soil biodiversity, resulting in carbon drawdown. So, Todd, can you contribute to the discussion and help our audience understand a bit more about regenerative agriculture?
Sure, thank you. So regenerative agriculture in viticulture is in fact growing more than vines. It's growing soil. And as you increase the biodiversity and microbiological life within a soil, you increase its capacity for retention in water. Just a little trivia, if you increase by 1% of organic matter in your soils, you increase the capacity for water available to your plants and vines, of course, by 16,500 gallons per acre per foot. So for a vine, let's say over 3 feet, that's 50,000 gallons of wine that's more available to a plant if you have 1% more of organic matter. So it's very, very important. But you also increase the biodiversity of your soils. You increase their stability. You also reduce erosion. But regenerative farming is not just about giving more life to the soils. It's also about sequestering carbon. So the idea is that plants sequester carbon, and plants including vines. So vines are a source of carbon sequestration, which is pretty amazing, because if you use certain sustainable practices like dry farming, you increase the depth of your roots and the density of your roots, which once again increases the amount of carbon that you can fix within the soil. But it's so important to introduce a series of different cover crops that also help to sequester carbon within the soils. And don't forget about your borders, your islands, and your corridors within your vineyard, which are some of the richest spots in your soil that have a tremendous amount of life. So that's really what regenerative farming and viticulture does.
And Allison, you already talked a bit about biodiversity. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, biodiversity just really helps us. I think one of the things I forgot to mention when we were talking about biodiversity is making sure that you allow for the ability of beneficial insects to be able to be there and kind of take care of some of the pests that you have. So having those corridors that Todd alluded to, having hedgerows, areas where you can really harbor these beneficial insects is extremely important to what we do. And I think I think in addition to the cover crops, so we're working with the natural, trying to maintain the natural biodiversity that we have in our vineyard areas, but also augmenting it by adding, cover crops that kind of help us really actually nurture the land, right? Like they'll fix nitrogen and become like a little biofertilizer for your vines as they decompose down into the soil. So it's important to think of working in harmony with the land and the area you already have, but also to augment when it makes sense, and to build up your soils, as Todd mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. So each of you have a number of certifications with different approaches, different requirements, all very rigorous, I think. Do your bottles have any information regarding sustainability, or these certifications, logos on the label, bottle seals that help the trade recognize your sustainability certifications? And I often speak about the fact that I think consumers are confused by some of these certifications. How do you communicate this through your real estate, I guess, which is your bottle, to the trade and to consumers?
I mean, I'll jump in. To be frank, we do not actually put it on our labels, which I find kind of funny in a way, because we spend so much time and effort. The checklists that Chris talked about are real. This is a real effort. It's a real team at every one of these wineries to really make sure that we are staying on our committed path to sustainability. And we don't actually put it on our label. We do have a lot of our sustainable initiatives on our website, both in terms of social aspects or social sustainability, as well as environmental sustainability, and that's pretty much how we communicate it.
Mm-hmm.
So at Dominus, we were certified Napa Green land in 2018, Napa Green Winery in 2020, and we'll be certified organic farming in May. This coming May. For the time being, we haven't put it on our label. We're studying and kind of excited about the possibilities of how we can communicate that. But I think what we're going to address primarily is how to make it clear how sustainability is integrated with our foundational philosophy. In the meantime, we're communicating it on our website in as clear a way as we know how, what our sustainability means to us, some of our sustainable practices, and to translate that into a logo is sometimes difficult, especially with the confusion around what sustainability is.
Yeah, Todd, I'm glad you brought up the confusion because we've over the years we've dabbled in the labeling on and off a little bit, and the unfortunate part of that is that anybody that sat down with TTV regulations on labeling, it's really kind of frankly it's a mess. And so while we did actually do some labeling early on with the made with organic grapes, and when you get into the nitty gritty of it, it became so complicated that we basically abandoned it. And I'll say what both Allison and Todd said. I think for us, it's really just about messaging with our customers and through our website. But what we did decide to do, basically, because we feel like we do want to, have some of that on the label, is we went to a very simple ingredient statement. And since that all of our grapes now coming in are certified organic, we basically use a kind of a simple generic made with organic our grapes. So we get a little something on there, and hopefully as we move along with this stuff and it becomes more common, I think we'll be able to get back to some of that stuff and getting on the label and having our customer have that information when they pick a bottle up off the shelf.
So we have to be really grateful to Napa Green for organizing these education sessions, because that's one way for consumers and the trade to understand the Napa Green certifications, what goes into it, and to get to know some of the wineries that are certified. So I think that's really important, and an important role that Napa Green is playing for all of us. So let me just switch gears to talk about another topic that's timely. There's recently been a recognition of how little progress we've made toward diversity and equity in the wine industry specifically. Nearly every sector of the industry, except for the hard work by Hispanics in the vineyards, lacks diversity. Anna, please tell us about the standards in Napa Green certification regarding social equity and inclusion. How will this help remedy the situation?
Yeah, thanks. I want to first just quickly jump in on that question about confusion, because that's one of the most common questions we get is, why are there these 4 programs that offer comprehensive certification? There's 2 other programs that just offer sustainability certification in the vineyards. And I just have to share, a big part of that is that, it would be easier for the consumer to understand, or all of us, if there was just one program. But we're there on the ground in these different regions to provide that direct support. I mean, everyone's been talking about how rigorous this is. The checklists are real, the paperwork is real. And so we're really there to provide that on the ground support. And that is why, for better or worse, there are a number of certifications. But in terms of social equity specifically, we've had social equity standards as part of our winery certification for several years, and also as part of the former Napa Green land certification that's now kind of transitioning to this new vineyard program. And as we were working on that transition, it was in the midst of 2020, so much coming to the fore, really rising to the fore in our awareness. And so we really wanted to amplify those social equity standards and really draw in more of the diversity and justice and inclusion pieces. And so we formed a working group of people including farm workers and people with a lot of expertise in social equity and justice, and really got their advice on how could we amplify those things. So some of our new vineyard standards includes, we have a culture of equity and inclusion section. And that includes, as a foundation, having a commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, having a statement saying this is really a priority for us. We've also placed a really big emphasis on sharing resources. So one of the people on our working group is Mariam Ahmed, and she's part of the Diversity in Wine Leadership Forum. So sharing those resources with our members, they know that they have places to go and learn more about trainings and other opportunities. Also, of course, there's a focus on, giving good wages, like Todd was talking about, giving really good benefits, good healthcare, That's really key. And then more and more of wineries and vineyards are relying on farm labor contractors. So it's also taking accountability for making sure the level of safety training that those contractors are doing. So also taking accountability for employees, not just that you're employing yourself, but that you may be contracting with as well. And the last piece I'll emphasize too is we have a big emphasis on, training and opportunities for advancement and continuing education. So things like, sorry, dog, but during performance reviews, asking them about where they want to go, where they want to be headed, and helping employees continue to advance. And apparently Lily, my dog, is passionate about that as well.
Yeah, and it's making my two dogs, they've been pretty quiet, but they got all excited when they heard your dog. So
Sandra, I wanted to jump in just a quick second. I mean, as the organization, the Napa Valley Vintners, we take a pride and we try to lead within our Napa Valley region. And this past fall, we were able to announce a $1 million investment over a few years into diversity initiatives, including mentoring programs and scholarships. And just this past week, we were able to announce that our partnership with the UNCF for scholarships for minorities to learn about the wine industry, whether it's production or business or the hospitality side. And so check out our website. You'll find the press release and more information and links to where you can find out more about the scholarships. So just wanted to jump in there, and I'll let you get back to the discussion.
yeah, thank you. I was very excited to see that. And I actually sent it to a very large group in my network as well, because I know I get questions from young people who want to enter the wine industry who maybe don't see people who look like them in the wine industry. So I was very excited to see that announcement. I want to make sure we have some time for questions from the audience, but I do want to give each of our wineries an opportunity to share some of their social commitments. It's not simply marketing. I want to stress that again. It's really giving back to communities. And I would love to hear from Allison, Todd, and Chris on the kinds of things that they're doing in their communities to help socially.
Sure, I would love to highlight a few of the things that we're doing here at Hess. And without question, as an industry, we still have a long way to go. So we just like with other parts of sustainability, we are on a journey and we are moving forward with the social equity piece of sustainability. We're on a journey and we're I hope, moving forward. One of the things that we're involved in, Hess, the Hess Collection is really well known as a wine brand for on-premise, right? So for those of you in the trade listening, that's for, wines by the glass, those things. And one of the programs that we're involved in right now is our wine, our on-premise only brand, Shirt Tail Ranches. Right now, for every case that we sell, we are donating $1 to a group called CORE, which is Children of Restaurant Employees who've been impacted by this latest pandemic. Of course, the trade has been unbelievably impacted over the last 14 months. And this organization works across all 50 states in the US to bridge the gap when restaurant employees have had children who have been sick and they've been unable to afford medical care for their children for urgent matters. This organization steps in and we're raising money for that for the next year. So we're committed to do that for the next year of sales on this product. So that's one way of us being able to take something like that nationwide. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is we are a family-owned business, as I've mentioned. And one of the things that has really struck me and earned my loyalty here at the Hess Collection is making wine on a mountain is sometimes really challenging. Since I've been here for the last 5 years, we've been through an earthquake, 2 landslides, and 2 major fires. So this has been very challenging for our workforce. There are some days when literally we can't get to our mountain estate. There's no way to get up here when you have a landslide or 2. So during that time, the family has stepped in, and when our employees, whether they are our full-time vineyard crew or our full-time cellar crew, or folks who work in our tasting room, or anyone, if you are not able to get to work during these natural disasters that we've had, everyone has been made whole. Everyone has been paid for every hour they would have worked if they had been able to get to the winery. This sounds insignificant, but it's not. That has added up to several months worth of pay for every employee here over the last 5 years. So that's the kind of commitment that the family takes to their employees, to this being a family-run enterprise, and to really build that kind of loyalty and the shared work ethic that we have here. And I'm very proud of that.
Great. Thank you. So Todd, do you want to quickly share a social commitment that you have done?
Absolutely. I thank you, Allison. First of all, very inspiring. And I want to say that COVID has been a really interesting time that shined it's really an opportunity to shine light on our values. And here at Dominus, we tested every employee for the past year, every 2 weeks, with a private laboratory where we got results within 2 days, not only to show how much we cared about their health, but the health of their families and their communities, because truly our workers are the fabric of our communities. And by taking care of them, we take care of our greater communities outside. And that was a really powerful statement. It made everyone feel safe and secure. And I think that's really what it's about. In addition to engaging and enrolling everyone in our commitment to sustainability, because it allows them to feel a sense of contribution. We all need to feel like we're contributing somehow.
Great. Well, I want to make sure that we don't wrap up before we have a chance to take some questions from the audience. Connor, do you have some questions for us?
Yeah, we have a few questions that I'm kind of fielding here. But one of them, and this goes to any of you winemakers, but is anyone dabbling in capturing the CO2 coming off of fermentations? Roland asked that in the comments.
No, but if you can come up to it with a solution for that one, we'll give you $1 million. That's one of the things that comes up in winemaking all the time. If we can capture that CO2, maybe contact Roger Bolton over at UC Davis. He's been speaking to that for probably 25 years.
Yeah, and I've heard of large breweries doing it, but I'm not sure any wineries at the scale of your wineries are currently doing it. Sandra, do you know of anyone that's doing that?
I don't specifically. I've heard that there's some efforts underway in Southern California, in the Santa Barbara area. I won't mention the specific winery, but I know that they are looking at how they can do that. And then their goal is to capture the CO2 and maybe sell it to pharmaceutical companies to be used in other products. So there are some tests underway.
Another question came in. We actually have a couple questions from Valerie here. But I think just as an example, I mean, we all drive, or many of us drive up and down the Highway 29 and Silverado Trail and see the beautiful cover crops. But what exactly is in the cover crop mix? So let's give an example of what gets planted and why each of those maybe benefits the vines and the ecosystem.
Oh, well, there are so many. There are barley, there's oats, there are legumes, which are your peas and fava beans. There can be, we use a lot of native flower mixes, so California poppies, bluebells, Chinese houses. There are so many available, some pre-mixed, some that you can mix in a custom way. And of course, best if they're particularly adapted to different soils. For example, fescues, some native fescues that can be adapted to soils that have a little bit more water. And let's not forget, like I mentioned before, the hedgerows and borders that can be planted with oaks and manzanitas and St. Catherine's lace. So many different species can be used.
Yeah, and just to springboard off of that, each of these each of these plants plays a different role in how it's helping your soil, right? So some of those plants have really deep roots and help break up the soil and allow more water to penetrate into the soil. Some of the plants will, like we were talking about before, will fix nitrogen and basically turn into green manure, into a fertilizer for your vines. So you want to have a mix of all of these things to help build your soil and your vineyards.
Okay, one other question of coming in, asking about housing in Napa and affordable housing. And as you know, that's a problem all over the Bay Area and many parts of the United States. So Valerie, I'll answer that question myself for you. The Napa Valley Vintners and many of our members are very involved in that issue through our committee efforts, through working with local governments. I think that issue is larger than any single winery, but it is a huge effort as part of the industry working with local government to try to solve, because I think it connects back to the employees and the local community and taking care of all of them. So another question here that came in anonymously is, how about glass? Any of your wineries doing anything on the glass side to cut back and maybe save a little carbon there?
Well, if we look at glass, we know that it represents 30% of the carbon footprint of a wine is in the glass, which is huge. We've always used a lightweight bottle at Dominus. We could probably do better, and we're looking at that. I think sourcing locally is an opportunity, but it's tricky because transporting a bottle from Europe by boat has a lower carbon footprint than transporting it across the country by truck. So there's so many factors, but it's something that I think as an industry we need to look at. And I would recommend Porto Protocol had a great webinar recently. You can find it online. It's called Climate in a Bottle, and they treat this subject very completely.
And Todd, just to follow up on that, could you say a little bit about what Porto Protocol is?
Sure. Porto Protocol is a member group of producers throughout the world, and their intention is to take on projects and communicate with each other and to the outer world about those projects. And it is a fantastic operation. We're members, recent members, but excited to participate in that.
Yeah, and NVV Vintner, or Napa Valley Vintner, Robin Lail was influential in kind of helping found that group, and Napa Valley Vintners was an early signatory to the agreement. So it's all something that we're passionate about. So,
and I was going to just jump in quickly, sorry, and say we also did a green packaging and purchasing webinar in January that we recorded and is available on our website. And the lightening up the weight of the glass was part of that conversation. So you can go to our napagreen.org and look for that if you're interested.
Sandra, I think you just found an example from Bordeaux, another fantastic region. So of something they're doing, so maybe Napa Valley can follow them in this. So
Chateau Smith Haute Lafitte, and they've been capturing CO2 in fermentation, selling it to pharmaceutical companies. I don't know in what form, to be used in toothpaste. And actually, Chateau Smith Haute Lafitte is actually American owned. It's a Bordeaux chateau, but it's owned. It's American owned. So that would be one for us to do a little bit more research on.
Yeah, definitely. So Sandra, I think that wraps us up on the questions. I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody joining us. I hope that, our goal was to help you understand the rigor of Napa Green certification, Napa Green winery, Napa Green vineyard certification, and how much work goes into this. These three winemakers are very committed to sustainability, but the entire operation has to be engaged in actually accomplishing the certification. So I hope you all have a better understanding of sustainability, and that you also understand that it's not just marketing, it's really beyond marketing, and it's critical for our future. So thank you to Chris, Todd, and Allison, and Anna, and Connor, for being with us. And thank you all for joining us. And we hope that you'll join another Napa session in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you all.